Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Monday afternoon, and I'm joined here today by Acsom Rabani. We're also going to be joined by Quinny. I know it's a slow news week, Acsom, but I thought I'd ask you guys on. So thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
And I'm running with the tagline in relation to Jota for obvious reasons, and we're going to get to the great man. But before we do that, I guess we need to talk about Kyogo. Not yet officially out the building. There is talk around the fact that, that there's a wee bit of synchronisation when it comes to announcements and all that stuff. The gossip mongers were out in force over the weekend saying he'd failed a medical, all that kind of jargon. But let's celebrate Kyogo. Let's celebrate Kyogo before we talk about the return of Jota. Acsom. And obviously, this is a story it's had legs for a while. But when it happened, I still was a bit disappointed and a wee bit surprised, I've got to admit.
Yeah, I think it took us all by surprise because it was literally, within half an hour of us beating Young Boys. And then by the time I get home, it's all over social media. So it definitely came out the blue. I don't think any of us anticipated it happening the way it did. Obviously, there's been murmurings for the last couple of weeks with the leaked article regarding the MLS side, Atlanta. Atlanta, sorry. So I think we all felt that there could be something on the go. I think just the timing of it surprised people. The fact it was Ren, I think that's another thing that took a lot of people probably by surprise, and just how speedily it's all kind of transpired in the days coming, and then obviously added to the Jota coming this way. So it's just been a whirlwind week in the world of Celtic, absolutely madness. And I mixed emotions, and I think I speak for a lot of Celtic fans in that sense, that obviously delighted that we had got through the Champions League, and then straight away you're feeling a bit, I don't know about deflated, but just, a bit shocked and saddened, because Kyogo's been a big part of, our success in the last 3.5 years, ever since he's came, and he's had such a good relationship with the fans, a hero for many, especially the kind of younger generation. And as a lot of us have said, probably the best since the King of Kings in terms of strikers. So a lot to take in. Obviously, still to be announced, but I think we're all kind of bracing ourselves for that announcement, and then the farewell message that will probably come, and all the compilations that we've seen. So sad times, but at Celtic we're kind of used to that over the last few years. As a club, we move on, and players will come and go, managers will come and go, but we've still got to kind of move on.
You know this, right? When I think about the disappointments of a big victory or a big win, right, which are the same thing, and then something happens right after it, and I'm thinking in my kind of Celtic supporting life of winning the league 97, 98, and then Wim Jansen leaves, directly after we win the league and stop the 10. And a stranger one, and by the way, a lot of people, this will resonate, I think, with a lot of Celtic fans, being at the game against Hearts when we beat the Scottish, we won the Scottish Cup, we beat Hearts, and then after it, instantly, apparently in the showers, Neil Lennon was given the job. And I remember the walk back to get my car, and the car had a parking ticket on it, but the news, the parking ticket would have been a proper disappointment, but the news took the sting out of it a wee bit at that time. So there has been moments, obviously, where a big victory has been followed by a bit of a sting. So I think in terms of PR and all the rest of it, and it's not just about PR, bringing Jota in at this time and, to soften that blow, because Kyogo was such a hero. And I was looking back on his career over the last week at Celtic, the fact that when he came in, we were in a situation under Ange Postecoglou where it was like every signing had to be a hit. There wasn't a bedding in period, Acsom. They had to use a cliche, hit the ground running, and Kyogo did it. Prolific under Ange Postecoglou, loved goals in the cup finals, loved goals against Rangers, scored goals in Europe for us, scored goals in the Champions League. But this season, it was just that constant niggling doubt, the change of agency, the Man City rumours, the MLS rumours that you spoke about. Then people start looking into, is he celebrating goals like he should be against Ross County? And Brendan Rodgers talks about it after the game. And then Rodgers speaks about a player, if he doesn't want to be here, then he leaves. And we're all saying, who's he talking about? So there has been that kind of niggle in the back of your mind. But as much as I love the guy, and as much as he's up there as one of our best strikers since Henrik Larsson. If he doesn't want to be here, he does have to go. So the sadness of that is always with a caveat of any player at this football club. If you think your time's up or you're too big or you want a new challenge, we'll facilitate it. So I think at the same time, as much as the Jota arrival is going to take the sting out of it, the fact that that's been made public by Brendan, he just threw that grenade and probably wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Again, as a fan, Acsom, I think to myself, okay, no problem, we can move on from that as well.
Yeah, and I think because a lot of the chat was, is this Celtic pushing the move because we wanted the money and he's just turned 30 last year of his contract. We want to try and get money while we can for him. And I think Brendan's press conference kind of alleviated a lot of those kind of concerns or worries. And I think as soon as he said that, look, the player's been angling for a move for a couple, he said a few months, we don't know how long, a couple of months, we don't know how long exactly that is. You alluded to it earlier that the change of agency took place last summer. There was chat then there was obviously the Man City rumours. So it feels like this has been something that he's potentially wanted for quite a while. And I think that does soften the blow because when players want away, there's not much you can do. We've seen it before when we've kept players, potentially when they wanted to go. COVID season being a very recent example. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for the potential dressing room dynamic. Now, I know a lot of people, and I think I seen Chris Sutton yesterday talking about it. Kyogo's not a bad egg. He's not one of those that's going to cause dressing room disruption if he doesn't want to be here. But if he's really pushing for a move, why do you want to keep someone who's not fully, the heart's not in it? And as you said, even his performances this season haven't been quite the same. Now, there's no denying we're going to miss him. He's been an iconic figure, a brilliant striker, and still the best striker that we've got at the club or had at the club this season. So he'll be difficult to replace. But if he's wanting to go, which is clearly the case, then and as Roger said, we've known this for a while. So I kind of trust that we've got something in the pipeline ready to go pretty soon. And hopefully whoever comes in can hit the ground running as well. But yeah, it does for me soften the blow when I heard that he's been wanting to go for a while. And then you do look back at the Ross County game, it was quite clear that he, I know a lot of people say, oh, too much is made of body language and all that kind of stuff, but it was pretty obvious his lack of celebration there. My one kind of regret is that we didn't get to give him a proper send off. That's something that I would have liked to have done. But as I said earlier, Celtic will move on. We've had great players leave in the past, and we've managed to get over it. I remember Larsson to this very day vividly, and obviously Kyogo's been great, but he's nowhere kind of in the same breath as Larsson, and we managed to get over that. So yeah, hopefully we can get someone in pretty soon, and I think that's what we're all waiting to see now. And only time will tell whether it's been a wise move or not.
Yes, 3.5 seasons at the football club, Acsom. I was asked last week what was my favourite memory of Kyogo Furuhashi, and there is one that constantly, as soon as somebody said that to me, the image of Kyogo in the League Cup final against Hibs, where the pyro behind him and he's jumping up and he's flight in the air. And you know what? It probably was amongst his best goals that he actually scored on a technical level for Celtic. It wasn't against Rangers, but that particular cup final was so important for Celtic under Ange Postecoglou. There was a galvanisation of winning that, which I think pushed us on to win the league. And winning the league that season was non-negotiable. We could not go through 2 seasons without winning the league. And that moment, I think, played such a massive part in the eventual outcome of winning the double. So that personally for me, as much as I love Boy's goals against Rangers, that personally for me was my favourite moment of Kyogo's time at Celtic. What was yours?
It's definitely up there. I remember being at Hampden that day, and I think Hibs had just scored, so they went 1-up, and then literally we went straight up the park and scored to make it 1 each. And then for the second goal, actually, the reason I probably don't put it as my favourite is because I missed it, because it was like, I think it was just very misty at the time as well. And then I can't remember. I think I was chatting to my mate, and then just turned around, and it was a quick ball over the top, and what a brilliant finish. So obviously when I watched it back, I was like, wow, what a goal. And as you say, iconic. You just remember him kind of embracing Ange at the end, the celebration, our first trophy that season, and what led to then obviously the dominance we've had since. But my favourite was the one at Celtic Park against Rangers.
Modern football's brutal, Assom, isn't it? It really is. Like you said before, you don't get a chance to say farewell to your heroes. They don't get a chance to say farewell to the first team that ever played in Europe for. So we once had 6 Japanese players. We're now down to 2. And I think there's a conversation around that as well, in relation to why are we no longer looking at that market? Why are we no longer looking at that region? Maybe we are, and there's nobody that we think are suitable. Because it was a criticism when we signed Kyogo. It was a criticism that Liam and Carrigan and I spoke about in relation to the fact that we had a couple of Japanese players under Gordon Strachan. But then since the success of one of those players, Nakamura, even though we signed him from an Italian club, we didn't go back into that market. We didn't, have a scout out there feeding us back every single time a player emerged. This guy could do well in Europe. We never had that, and we didn't have it until Nakamura signed. Are we moving into, you think, into another process or another period of time where we really aren't tapping into that market?
Yeah, obviously Ange had that knowledge, so that was a real reason as to why we signed so many in such a short space of time. He had first-hand dealings of working with these players or against these players, so he knew them very well. Also, I think Japan, just as a nation, have grown so much since when we first signed Nakamura. There's a lot of Japanese talent now playing in the top leagues. So I don't think it's as easy just to get as good deals, probably, because a lot of them will be getting tapped up by sides in Germany or even England. You've seen that now as well with players going there. So it's not as easy. I think we were actually rumoured, I don't know if it was just, I don't know where I seen it, but we were rumoured with a Japanese striker last week as well. But I think that was quickly shut down by those in the know. So yeah, I think it is a market we can still look at, but we're also now working, the price range and the budget range that we are looking at for signings seems to have moved up a notch. We're now in the kind of £5 to £10 million bracket where we're looking at signing players. So again, that's a whole new challenge for the club in terms of recruitment. It's about, we're no longer trying to look at bargain, deals and hoping for a gem like Matt O'Reilly as we have done in the past. We're now spending bigger, so the expectation that comes with that is different. And we look at the kind of latest striker that we're linked with, a 22-year-old Danish Chris Gardner. So there's gambles that come with that, but I think that's what we've been wanting Celtic to do for a while now, is try and sign these guys before it's too late. You see, he's now linked with a couple of German sides, so that's where we have to get in before it becomes unattainable.
You look at their links. We've been linked to that player probably for 18 months, Assom. So you're right. There is a timing issue as well when it comes to the point where someone you've identified may be ungettable by the time you make a move. So, yeah, loads of great comments coming through. I am going to run through that list of Celtic strikers since the aforementioned Henrik Larsson was our top goal scorer in 2003-04 with 41 goals. Here's a list of our top goal scorers since the departure of Henrik Larsson. And then you can decide whether Kyogo is the best of the bunch. Now, John Hartson was the top goal scorer after Henrik left, but he was part of the the Henrik era. So I'm not sure he would be in the category because he was a player who was already there. We didn't bring him in. Magic Zaraski was the top goal scorer along with Big John in 2005-06. Then we had Jan Venegur of Hesselink, followed by Scott McDonald, who was a top goal scorer for a couple of seasons on the bounce. Robbie Keane came in, scored about the same amount of goals as he played games. Then we had Gary Hooper, who was a top goal scorer for 3 seasons, Aston. 22, 29, 31. Good run.
Underrated, I think, Gary Hooper.
Very much so. Still playing, by the way.
I've seen that.
Still playing. Chris Commons was then the top goal scorer with 32 goals, followed by Lee Griffiths, who scored 20 and 40 to be the top goal scorer 2 seasons running. Then there's a name that I think you could throw in, but he wasn't here for long. Moussa Dembele. He scored 32 goals, 2016-17. And then Scott Sinclair was the top goal scorer in Brendan's first season, followed by Odsun Edouard, 3 seasons running. Kyogo Furuhashi, 3 seasons running, albeit he shared that accolade with Matt O'Reilly last season. Any names that are springing out that could give him a run for his money?
It's a good list, isn't it? We've done not bad. Not bad. I remember when Larsson first left, we really struggled because you remember it was Henri Camara that we got on a big money loan deal. I think it was from Wolves, maybe.
Remember Henri Camara? Yes,
and we paid a hefty fee for him, but he just wasn't up to it. But yeah, we've had a good list, and I think especially maybe for me, it's the last 3 there. That's kind of in my running between Kyogo, Edward, and Dembele. Now, for me, Kyogo, because of his longevity, because of his goals in Champions League games, crucial European games, he's constantly a thorn in that Rangers side, cup final goals, just his overall personality, his dedication. For me, Kyogo, and even you look at his last game potentially there the other day, a hat-trick of disallowed goals. It was a shame that he couldn't finish with a goal. But yeah, for me, Kyogo gets it. But some real good players in there, and like I say, honourable mention to Gary Hooper, who I thought was underrated as well. But yeah, we've done well with those. Dembele for me wasn't here long enough. Had the attributes and had the potential, but when you leave after a couple of years, it's hard to kind of have the reason Larsson was so iconic, other than the fact he was world class. He was here for 7 years and passed on a lot of opportunities to move to bigger clubs. We all know about that link to Man U when Ferguson wanted him sooner. So that's what makes it so different back then. But yeah, for me, Kyogo is the best since.
There you go. Now, some great names there. Welcome Quinny, to the show as well. 1 or 2 things to discuss, Quinny. And
just a few.
Just a few, mate. Just a few. One of those weeks. We are talking, before we get stuck into the Jota arrival, which might happen whilst we're live, by the way. And if it does, I'm sure you'll tell us in the comment section. We're talking about the player who is leaving, and that is obviously Kyogo. And the big question was, is he the best since Henrik Larsson left the football club? Some good names in the mix there, by the way, and Acsom says yes, he is. What's your take on it?
I think the difference between Kyogo and a lot of those other names is that extra kind of stardust that he brings. Like Larsson, I caught some of the stream that I'd missed on my flying carpet, getting back into my house here. But I think when you look at the likes of Cameras, Dembele's, Hoopers, and all the rest of it, they were good goal scorers. But with Larsson and with Kyogo, anything's possible in any game. You're never totally screwed. You're never totally backs against the wall. There's always something that they could bring. And maybe there's Kyogo loves a little bit of the airplane celebration as well. So maybe there's a wee bit of subconscious. We're all connecting between the two of them there. But I think in terms of that kind of X factor element, he's definitely the closest thing we've had since.
Do you think it's a bit unfair on the likes of Lee Griffiths, who doesn't seem to get a mention, guys? Aston says no. Shaking his head, no.
Lee Griffiths had that brilliant 40 goal season, and he was really good that year, and brilliant finisher. But overall game intelligence and in terms of his full package, he's just not in the running for me.
Not in the discussion.
Not in the discussion. No.
Well, listen, it shows us how many quality strikers we've had since the great man left the football club. And when I'm looking down that list, I think we need to go and get a few of them in for This Is Acsom, actually. What are the viewers saying in the comment section? Let's run through some of the comments and keep them coming. What do you think? Who has been the best striker since Henrik Larsson left the football club?
There's a few comments I've seen where they're saying they shouldn't even kind of be mentioned in the same breath. I think it's important for people to know that we're saying the best since, and it's not a case of even comparing the two, because I do agree. Like, Larsson was he was a world-class talent that we were blessed to have, and I was lucky. All three of us were lucky enough to see him in his prime and be old enough to fully appreciate just how class he was. So no, I don't think there's in any way, I don't think any of us, or I've seen many people ever kind of compare the two in terms of ability. But we're just talking about since, and it's very rare we're ever going to see someone of Larsson's ability stay at Celtic for that long. But in terms of since then, yeah, I think it's a fair discussion to have.
Yeah, and I think it's another reminder that we won't have a player of Larsson's quality at Celtic for as long as we did, because the way modern football's gone, they will leave. But yeah, the debate isn't, are they as good as each other, or is Kyogo Furuhashi better than Larsson? That's not the discussion. It's, is Kyogo the best striker to pull on a hoops since Larsson left the football club? Monty comes in to say Kyogo being sold in this window is utter lunacy. Quinny, what's your take on that? Do you look at the situation and that, you know what, where are we? It's the 27th of January now. And yes, there's been a few names thrown in. There was another one I read just before coming on this morning. I don't know how much truth's in that, Evan Ferguson. There's going to be a lot of strikers linked to Celtic. The timing of it, Acsom and I were talking about the timing of it. That's a bit off, isn't it? So I get where Monty's frustration is.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal with the Aston Villa game still to go. But again, I think Rodgers has got kind of form for getting players to hang on a little bit longer. And just with how it did all kind of unfold at full time from young boys, he was straight on the jet, so I think, like, although the timing isn't ideal, I think Rodgers has probably made this happen the way it is to get a bit longer out of it, sort of thing, because from all the reporting that's been on this channel and all the kind of rumours that are kind of backing that up, like, it feels like this has been quietly been worked on in the background for a little while. So the timing isn't great, but I found it so reassuring listening to Brendan the other day where he was adamant, Dyson can maybe play up front, but that's not the answer. So let's not go saying that publicly, because Michael Nicholson might listen to this and then we're doing ourselves out of a striker. That was the kind of tone I felt he was giving out. Like, don't tell the Celtic higher ups that might be a solution, because they'll just leave us with it. And that, so I found that really reassuring, that Jota is not the replacement, that it's not just like that kind of thing. So yeah, the time is not ideal, but like, with the greatest will in the world, when a player wants to go, the player wants to go, and it's, you can't really do anything beyond that. So not ideal, but I think it's probably been managed the best way possible for the club from Brendan.
I agree with Quinny with regards to the Brendan's response, because he was specifically asked about Maeda, and he could have easily have given a kind of vague, wishy-washy answer as to, look, we've got that option, and of course we want to replace Kyogo, but it has to be the right guy and it has to be the right time. He could have said all that, which would have automatically made us think, yeah, we're trying to get someone in, but we might wait. I think we know who we want in, and I think we're working on it, and I think we'll get someone in. And in terms of the timing, it isn't ideal, but again, as Quinny says, it happens so quick after. It's almost as if we said to Kyogo, we need you for that young boys game. Give us one more big push. If you get us through, then off you go. And it seemed like that's kind of how it's played out. The Aston Villa game, I know a lot of people are talking about it. Look, of course we want to go and give it our best go, and you want to see Celtic compete and try and get high up in the table. But in isolation, it means, far less than that young boys game did. That was the crucial one. This Aston Villa game now is a bit of a free hit in the sense that, it's not anything major riding on it. Yes, there's money involved and pride and all that, but I think timing wise it could have actually been worse, because if we assume that the league we've got it in the bag, if Kyogo wants to go, and that's what we've been told, isn't it a good time potentially to get his successor in now, bed him in for this second half of the season, so that when those qualifiers come in summer, he's ready to go. He's ready. He's played with the team. He's assimilated into the squad, rather than trying. Kyogo goes in the summer and then you've got a couple of weeks to try and get someone in for a huge qualifier. I think timing wise, it kind of adds up.
No, you know what? I agree with you. I absolutely agree with that. And I also agree with the fact that Brendan Rodgers chooses his words very wisely, which I think was why we were a wee bit concerned about, not that long ago, the things that were said about the fan base singing about Kieran Tierney and the disrespectful nature of it. I think that's why it took us by surprise, Quinny, because he is so assured and he's very specific in the words that he uses. It looks as though he uses them very, very wisely and carefully. And I agree with you. I read into it the exact same way as you did. I'll just apply a wee bit of pressure on the board at the moment. And let's remember, last January where we brought in Adam Maeda. Yes, he came in on loan. Massive, massive player for us in the last 6 months of the campaign. And then we make it permanent and he gets bedded into the team. We're going to be talking about Adam Maeda, but before we do that, Tony Ratton brings up the subject of the man Jota. A huge statement of intent. I said before you came in, Quinny, we kind of needed one because when all said and done, if we were sitting here with the Kyogo news in isolation, without the Jota chaser, it would have been a much different discussion we were having. Bringing Jota in makes things a lot easier, I think, as fans to accept.
Oh, big time, because the mantra out the club for the last couple of years has been coming out of every window stronger, and like with Kyogo leaving, like that's a big benchmark to kind of lean against in that one. So it almost does counterbalance quite nicely. And I've heard everyone kind of saying it. I think it's on everyone's mind at the moment. But Jota on the left, Kun on the right, like it's probably never been as good as that on paper.
Dynamite.
Let's see them actually
get
back to action. But it's, that probably just about does make us stronger, even if that was the only business that get done in terms of the starting 11, because like we've spoke about it whenever I've been on here anyway. Like Kun is kind of the only one that has a little bit of grab the game by the scruff of the neck. Like, give me the ball in the halfway line, I'll beat a man or two, I'll get us to the box. Yeah. And that's Jota's bag all the way over. So having more than one guy that can do that, it's not going to be fair domestically, like who we're going to be playing against. Like it should be brutal and it's going to be great to watch. But in Europe, that, when we get to the next round, like that's just going to get that means like really without the worst draw possible, we really do have a proper chance, a puncher's chance in most of these ties that could come our way, I think, because that the thing with this top end of European football, it is like variety. It's having more than one guy that's a danger man, having more than one way to score a goal. And like we do have more than one way to score the goal. Brendan's spreading the goals around the team and all the rest of it. But in our heart of hearts, we kind of all know from watching the team that if one or two of them aren't at it against some of the better teams we could come up against, we might not have much of a solution. Whereas that extra player coming in, I just think it's huge. Some people are maybe biting back at me on this one. I do agree, like Kyogo being lost out the centre position for like a Maeda or maybe even a Maeda perhaps, or a new face is, it's hard to imagine someone coming in and doing better. But I love Kyogo, but I've been a big critic of his over the last year or two for the amount of chances he misses. And it's not even just for the chances he misses, but especially the young boys game as well. I know all those offside goals went in and all the rest of it. But at 0-0, he's got a terrible, terrible habit of shooting when he should square somebody on, and he is great. He does lots of good stuff, but he's not perfect. He's not Henrik Larsson, and he can be replaced,
I think the key in that, Quinny, as well, is it's not the Kyogo of Ange's first 2 seasons, or we're not using him in that way. So is the current version of Kyogo as massive a loss as he would have been maybe a year ago? No, because I think the team plays in such a way now that whether it's by design or Kyogo himself or whatever the reasons, we're not as reliant on him. Whether it's for goals, clearly, as you've seen this season, or even in build-up, as we often see, he's not as involved as much. So I think the current version of Kyogo is more replaceable than previous versions of Kyogo. And that's where, look, if we don't sign somebody, and I don't even just mean like a kind of half-hearted loan, it has to be a striker that's our kind of plan to be the main man going forward. And by all accounts, Chris Gardner's that guy. And yes, it's a gamble in that we don't know if he's going to be as good as Kyogo or what, but he'll take time. But if we sign Chris Gardner, we sign Jota, and we potentially get Kieran Tierney in January, then we are a stronger side, and that's even with me saying how good Kyogo is. But you're looking at that left side, which a lot of people have been saying in terms of left back, that will have been addressed. Then you've got strength and depth, which is the main thing, because you've then got Kyogo, Maeda, Jota, Kun, and Forrest as your kind of 4 winger options. so much better than it's been for the last year. So much better. So it just gives you options, strength and depth, a bit of that creative spark that we've all said, as you mentioned, Quinny, that other than Kuhn has been missing. So look, I think you mentioned PR earlier, Paul John, and it's true. I heard Hugh Keevins kind of saying it at the weekend as well on Super Scoreboard. It's like,
have you just compared me to Hugh Keevins?
Well,
see, this is a moment. This is a watershed moment here.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, well, we know how most fans feel about that, but I think, look, if ever there was a time to appease fans after losing Kyogo, it would be by announcing the return of Jota and Kieran Tierney. Like, what a return that would be. So, and I think that's possibly why there's been a delay. I think we're waiting to do the two announcements of Kyogo and Jota together, so it doesn't, just as a PR kind of stunt as well. So, yeah, look, I think a lot to happen still in a week, but I'm pretty positive as to how we end up. That could come back and bite me, and this time next week we've not replaced Kyogo, but I'm pretty confident we will.
You know this, right, when we're talking about it, had we even mentioned, in fact, I think we deliberately, across the board on Acsom, didn't mention a return to Jota because we felt it was something that was maybe a bit pie in the sky, Quinny. When the news, for example, broke about Kieran Tierney coming back to Celtic, we didn't really want to go down the route of saying, oh, and Jota might come back as well, because you're thinking, where's the credibility in that? That's not going to happen. And then here we are. Actually, with a few days left in January, and it is going to happen. If we also manage to get Kieran Tierney and a striker in the same window, I just think we'll break the internet. We'll just break it. I mean, it's just going to explode.
Can you imagine the announcement video if they combine the two?
That's going to be incredible. I mean, what a job they guys have got in their hands to announce all this stuff. But again, when we're and listen, I'm a football fan where I want the best quality players at Celtic. So I never like losing a quality player. But if you look at it over the period, when you look at Ange Postecoglou's time at the football club, what's kind of happened with their star men since then? There is an evolution constantly at Celtic, and we get it. And sometimes the time period is shorter than we would like in terms of a player's duration at Celtic, right? And I've spoken many, many times that if you just get that sweet spot when they're all there together, then you can do something really worthwhile in Europe. But since Ange Postecoglou's left the club, and this isn't about him, it's about Celtic, really. We did lose Jota, right? Big player. We lost a massive player for us after the treble win. We lost Lila Bada. It couldn't be helped. There was nothing we could have done to resolve that situation. We lost Matt O'Reilly, and now we've lost Kyogo. And if you say it like that, if you say it out loud, Quinny, that sounds shocking, doesn't it? It really does. But I think what the club has done and what we've done well is we are as ambitious in the transfer window in replacing these players. So you look at, for example, by the way, I'm not going to say we got lucky. It was. Let's give them credit. It was a tremendous bit of business bringing in Kuhn, albeit he was about the fourth winger we brought in after the departure of Jota, right? You're looking at Engels came in, big money midfielder, not a direct replacement for Matt O'Reilly, but it shows ambition that we were going to go out there and spend that level of cash. Bringing Jota back shows the ambition. So, Quinny, what I think I'm saying here is the disappointment of losing a striker is real, but we have shown the ambition of bringing in players of a calibre that is going to allow us to progress at this level.
Yeah, we've definitely had that kind of watershed moment over the last year and a half or so where like the fees, and I see people chatting about it in the live chat at the moment, but the fees associated with the players we're buying now, Maeda and Engels in particular, is that we're very much in the maybe not quite the Champions League transfer market, but we're certainly in they have to be Champions League prospects kind of market, and that takes you out of the the Kuhn and the Haksabanovic price point of under 5 million, and it gets you closer to the higher one. And I think like the comments we just mentioned there about Brendan, like there's definitely more of a range for Celtic now, and we all kind of feel that that's just like it's going to become normal that we buy guys for 8 million quid. They take a while to break into the team. Maybe they're not definite starters. If we are going to go and replace somebody like Kyogo, we now firmly expect it to be a somewhat marquee signing, a guy that maybe we've heard of before, a guy that's maybe had more than 100 matches before, maybe they've played in the Champions League once or twice in the past. So I think like when you were reading through those names there, I would also throw Juranovic into it, because I thought Juranovic was a star when we first kind of snapped him up. He really kind of was part of that kind of resurgent period that we had. I know he wasn't here terribly long, but played for Croatia and was in the World Cup, and we all kind of loved a wee bit of Juranovic on penalties, fireball and all that kind of thing. But when you look at the squad that you've just laid out there and throw in a couple of names into it, we're not too far away from having one of these Porto graphics. Where are they all now? And look how much money Celtic made from this 11 or whatever. And that's, as Celtic fans, what we've been longing for, is to get into that kind of the big boy room of, we don't just, selling players isn't fun when you're losing them, obviously, but part of that cycle is replacing them. And a big part of the thing that the club's been modelling on is the player transfer model. And hey, if you're only selling like Yangs and O's and all the rest of it for 1 and 2 million, it doesn't really give you much capital to go back in and do more. You need to have the O'Reilly and the Jota and the Tierney and the Kyogos going for these sums of money to then fuel everything else. So as long as we keep compounding what we've done over the last year or two, I've got good faith that we replace them well.
And I think that was the problem. That was the problem. If you look at last summer, we sell Jota 25 million, and then what did we do? As you said, Paul John, 4 or 5 wingers like Tilio, Yang. Obviously Kuhn's worked out well, but we were all just gambling. We bought about 4 wingers, hoping one of them will come good.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems like there's a different kind of market we're working in now. If we sell Kyogo for 10, we're aiming for Quistgarden at around about the same figure. We then went for Engels, obviously, 11 million. Trusty, 6 million. Ida, 9. That's the problem in the past was we'd be making big money for these players, but then we'd still be spending on 4 or 5 players at the 1 and 2 million, hoping one of them comes good. Now it looks like we've actually got our strategy correct, which is try to buy in younger talent, but guys that have played in good leagues, guys that have got experience. It's not just projects. Engels isn't a project. It's a different kind of player that's played in the Bundesliga, Belgian international. So it's a different market we're working in, and I think we're going to bear the fruits of that. And you're looking at that squad now, and hopefully by the end of January we'll all be pretty happy with it. But it looks like that squad's really building, and you've got so many assets in there. But you've also got a squad that right now, as Quinny says, you get a favourable draw in the Champions League, and you're not dreading it, thinking it's a write-off. I'm not by any means saying that we're going to be favourites against any of the teams that we might come up against, but you're looking forward to it, thinking we can compete. And they've earned that because they've had a really good Champions League campaign over the course of 7 games and competed in 6 of them. So I think we're in a really good position, and a lot of credit goes to the manager, the current group, and those above him that are looking like they're finally getting a grip of this recruitment.
I agree with that. And by the way, we spoke about it for long enough when we were buying that type of player, Quinny, the guys that you've mentioned there, where it was really just trying 3 or 4 options and hoping that one of them turns into a Van Dijk. And you're thinking, right, that's a dangerous game. It seems far more focused and efficient, actually. And in the first instance, you're thinking, how can it be efficient if you're buying a player for 9, 10, 11 million pounds? But the guys you mentioned, Marco Tilio, Yang, Palma, okay, so there's 3 players. Add it up. You know what I mean? And you think to yourself, that's not efficient at all. And none of the 3 players are going to make it at Celtic. They've not made that impact. And then with Kuhn, I thought that was, it's a strange one, because that was a tremendous bit of business. A player who many, many times threatened to do what he's doing now, but never did when he got to the club that gave him the platform. And so it was a perfect kind of match for Celtic. It's to think about Jota down the left and Kuhn down the right. It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening. I'm struggling to figure out how much money we've actually made on Jota. Right, so if we're talking business here, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. We spent 6 million on him initially. Am I right, or was it 6.5? 6 million quid, right? And then we sell him. Although we sell him for the reported figure of 25, didn't we give 25% of that to Benfica? I think at the time.
Yeah, on Transfermarkt to the Jota transfer is now displayed as like 12 million or a bigger fee because of something like that.
Yeah. And then obviously we're bringing them back, and I read a fee this morning, the 6.7 million. I'm not sure the exact figure, but we've now got the player and we've made profit on him. By the time Kieran Tierney comes back, we'll have the player, having made £25 million on him. It is sensational. A bit of luck involved in that as well. And obviously, Tierney with his injuries, Jota with his form and choice of clubs has resulted in us having them. But if you look at just this season, guys, at this moment, before we do the Jota deal and before we do the Kyogo deal, we've recouped 43 million quid in transfer fees, having spent 31. we're still 12 million up, right? And that's because we're doing not just the big ones like your Matt O'Reillys of this world. We're also doing good deals on players like Boss and Lowell, even like Said Haksabanovic, made our money back on him. Although it's undisclosed, we've not lost money on him. We've definitely got our money back and a wee bit more. Mikey Johnston, £3 million. And you look at that, you're thinking, wow, we're going into the Jota deal having already made 12 million quid this season.
As well.
Bernabei. I mean, the value we've got for what's that, 5.5 million, something along those lines. It's incredible going into the transfer market again for players in that position of strength, because then what happens is you get the next done, which is your Champions League riches. So I agree with what you're saying, Aston. We need to do business now with one eye on the qualifiers. Now, some brilliant comments coming in, and some that I think people will disagree with. So let's get them up. Pete McGee, I never once felt the excitement I felt watching Kyogo when I heard Griffiths was in the starting 11. Good goal scorer, but didn't bring the joy for me. Yeah, I get that. And he's one of the guys that should have had a much lengthier career at a higher level. He's kind of basically in semi-retirement now over in Australia. We wish him well. Wahid Bob, here we go, lads. Let me know if you agree with this one. A lot of the fans' perception in Jota is based on him wearing a bumblebee in a pub. I have to wait and see the proof on the park. Now, are you talking, Wahid Bob, of the proof on the park second time around? Because certainly the first time he was here, we seen the proof on the park, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that applies with anyone. With any signing, you have to wait and see the proof on the park. But I think that's a bit, if we were linked with Jota, I think a lot of the feelings about the Jota one, or not a lot, but some of the negativity around it I've seen is maybe blinkered by the disappointment of losing Kyogo. Because if we were still had Kyogo, and we were linked with getting Jota back, or he was coming back, I don't think anyone would see a negative in it. I think it's like twofold almost. It's like they're disappointed at the Kyogo one, and they don't feel that just bringing Jota back is going to, basically replace him. Not even replace him just in terms of personnel, but just make up for that kind of loss. I feel that Jota obviously has been away a while. Again, I found Brendan Rodgers' comments on Friday's press conference encouraging when he spoke about Jota, that he's had a lengthy chat with him, and he spoke about a legacy and coming back and just being hungry to succeed again. And I think Jota, he's had a tough time of it. And it just shows you again, sometimes the players need that. They maybe go away and realise, they miss what they've had at Celtic. Sometimes I look at Odsonne Edouard, I've seen him linked with a move to MLS the other day, and he's not even getting a game for a side like Leicester who are struggling. So a lot of times players go away and then they realise, in terms of a professional sense, yes, it's worth obviously trying out and testing yourself at the highest level and whatnot. But Jota obviously went to Saudi Arabia, barely played, then thought he'd go to France and maybe revitalise his career there. Again, it hasn't worked out for him. And maybe, again, it's just about timing and being at the right place at the right time. And I think Celtic's where he enjoyed his football. You could see it. He had a great relationship with the fans. And this could be just, again, the place to reignite his career. And I think I've got no issues with, I think it might take him a bit of time to get back to what he was. But a few weeks of training and then just getting back up to speed, I think we'll see the Jota of old, if not better. He's 25 now. He's coming towards his kind of peak years, and he'll be hungry to show that he's still got it. So I think it's an exciting prospect, and we spoke about it before, the likes of him and Kuhn, and once in the same team. I've got nothing but excitement for this signing.
I'm the same. Since leaving Celtic, he's played 35 games of football. That's not enough for a player of his age. So you're right, it will take him a wee bit of time, you think, maybe with the conditioning and get back up to speed. When we talk about man management, Quinny, Brendan Rodgers, and we can only go by what other players who have played under him say, he's the ideal manager for a player like this. And I think Celtic are the ideal club. You look at the way that Matt O'Reilly was nurtured at Celtic, right? So we all know the story about Matt O'Reilly being at Fulham. And if we didn't know he was there, Peter Grant tells us every other week that Matt O'Reilly was at Fulham. And obviously he made a decision based on game time to take that kind of step backwards to MK Dons. He was without a club for a spell, worried if he'd made the right decision, etc. And it took an incredible amount of mental fortitude to get back into the game, back fit, and then to start hitting the radars that he had hit previously. Because Matt O'Reilly of Fulham, the young Matt O'Reilly was getting interest and gathering interest from the likes of Borussia Dortmund. And then it looked as though his career had kind of gone off track, got back on track, comes to Celtic and then takes it to another level. Kuhn, certainly looking at Kuhn's career, didn't make it at Bayern Munich, didn't make it at Ajax, comes to Celtic, and we nurtured the player. So I think as a football club, we're good at it, Quinny. But I also think Brendan Rodgers is very good at that as a man manager.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the more harder things in football to quantify is like being happy with your workplace, being happy with your environment, the people you work with and, the setting and everything else. And like with Jota, I think there's a little bit of this. It does go around for like, it's a little bit the leftovers of the Tierney and the Rodgers situation of you never go back and, move forward. And is it maybe lazy recruitment or whatever? But again, thinking about this kind of space we're moving into now with the evolution of the Champions League format, the business we're doing in the market, like clubs like Ajax, Porto, Benfica, they take guys back all the time that they sold to Man United for 100 million that didn't make it out, and they'll take them back for a free contract. Davy Claessens and Daley Blinds and all these types of guys, So it's kind of like, it's not unusual practice. It doesn't mean that we're being lazy or one-dimensional or anything like that. If it's the right player for, like, he fits here, like we can get Jota to play 8 out of 10 for his potential, but it looks like when he was in Saudi Arabia he could have touched 4 out of 10, and maybe in France that was still a little bit undetermined. But I think with the whole Rennes thing, I'll just kind of add this into the chat, but like Rennes have just changed their manager to Sampaoli, who used to manage Barcelona. He's managed some big clubs, quite a fiery character, and like I think Kyogo going there is probably going to change the fortunes of their season in a big way, because they really need firepower, and he's a very attack-based manager. But it does put a wee question onto Jota if Sampaoli didn't fancy him, because Sampaoli is like a very hard work ethic, gung-ho, throw the kitchen sink at it type approach. And, I'd have thought maybe somebody like Jota might have been would maybe fit in there, but he made quite a quick decision on Jota. I don't know what or why for him to move out. So I get the questioning from some fans, like if he couldn't quite snap, he got in at Rennes under the last manager, he looked quite good and it could have maybe kicked on, so it's not like it wasn't the level. So I do get some of the trepidation that comes around it, but I've seen too many players go back to where they had good times in the last like 5 or 10 years, and it works out pretty well for them. They can reset their career, they can get their kind of their image, as it were, across European football reestablished, and then maybe they springboard and they go and have another move, and maybe we'll be talking about something like that with Jota in another year or two from now. But yeah, I think like overall with Jota coming back, like if Brendan spoke to him, he's got his head screwed on. Like we've got so many of the unknowns when it comes to Palma and Yang and all that kind of stuff. They didn't fit here, they didn't work out, they can't play the Scottish game. All of those intangibles are there. We know it's going to work out in that sense. There's just then the, his mentality, where he's at, where's his fitness at, some of those things that maybe kind of come into it. So I've got like no issues with the move at all. I'm quite buzzing for it.
I think it'll be a fitness thing. I think once he's up to speed in that sense, because Jota, again, remember he's used to like that adoration from the fans and the, just getting fans off their seat. He loved all that. He thrived off that. He thrived off the relationship. He obviously enjoyed his time in Glasgow. There's so many factors that make you think, right, he's going to be coming back and hungry to get all that again, because he's not had that for 18 months. A lot of people saying, yeah, he's made his millions, of course, but even as footballers, when you're not playing football, you're not happy. And I think he'll come back. And Brendan Rodgers, I think, is a great man manager, and he gets the best out of players often. And you look at what he did with Scott Sinclair, revitalise his career. And I feel like he can get Jota in. He said it on Friday's press conference. He was really gutted that when he left, because that was a player he was really looking forward to working with. So I've got no issues with that. I think, and the thing with players coming back, Quinny, as well, that you mentioned, Tierney and Jota are both, you look at their ages, this isn't getting guys back at like 30, 31. The way we always thought, we're going to get these players back like Tierney or McGinn when they're done, and that's what we all thought. But if we're getting them back at this age, and I seen something on an Arsenal podcast actually just yesterday where they were talking about Tierney, and they were commending how he's got different options right now. He can earn a lot more money playing for plenty of other clubs. He's only 27. He's still sought after. He's actually looked really good for Arsenal in the games that he's came on recently. He doesn't need to come back to Celtic. So he's coming back purely out of a want and a desire to come back and perform for us. And this is a guy at 27. Same with Jota at 25. We're getting these guys still in their peak. So that's adding experience to what's quite a young squad. It's giving good balance. It's strengthening the quality. For me, it's a no-brainer, and I honestly think it's an exciting time for Celtic fans.
I think it is exciting. Asked them so much so that on a Monday afternoon we've got over 3,000 tuned into this stream. So thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. You make some great points here, Quinny, in relation to people have this default setting, never go back. And what you're saying is actually what the data will tell you is that loads of players go back and it works. Maybe back in the day where you're looking at certain Celtic players who came back to the football club and it didn't work out. Even then, I'm looking at some of them thinking to myself, yeah, but it did okay for Bertie Auld to come back, Bertie Auld came back to Celtic and did all right. Billy McNeil came back as a manager and did all right. So absolutely, I think the game has moved on. It's completely changed now. And I cannot wait, actually, to see how we're going to announce the likes of Jota and Kieran Tierney. It's exciting.
Do you think it'll be today? I think we'll get something later today.
That's the chat, isn't it? The chat is
Jota Day.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about. We have barely touched on the subject of Aston Villa on Wednesday night, right? And we're into the last 10 minutes of the show. I'm going to bring up PGF Don. Robbie Keane, PGF Don says, was a far better striker than Kyogo could ever have hoped to be. Right, okay. Listen, that's a discussion that would probably take an hour in itself. Over his career, it's hard to argue with you. But I think in terms of Celtic, Kyogo obviously is.
I'll raise you Craig Bellamy, who I thought was better than Robbie Keane.
As a footballer, Craig Bellamy was sensational.
For Celtic specifically as well, that spell that he had with us.
He was sensational. I remember he sent us a video message. He sent us a video message wishing us well in the charity endeavours, and he called me John, and I didn't care because Craig Bellamy can sometimes be a wee bit unhinged. Robbie Keane, 325 club goals in 737 games. And then you look at his international level because he was the talisman for Ireland as well for so many years. And you look at his international record of 68 goals in 146 games for Ireland. Probably still the most capped player for Ireland. Someone in the comments, keep me right on that one. So yes, over the entirety of his career, I get your point. For Celtic, though, Kyogo gets my vote on that one. Now, Paul Bosas brings in the Villa discussion. Please don't dismiss the Villa game as a free hit. Absolute rubbish. There's a lot hanging on where we finish, and the higher up the better. 90-16 means we are seeded, plus the second leg at home. Never mind that, Paul. We can still finish in the top 8, apparently. Right. It's going to be a big night on Wednesday, and this is the excitement of this new setup and the new structure of the Champions League. Asking when you look at how big a night it can be, because there's so much riding on it for so many different clubs. Celtic are through. We don't know what that's going to look like, though. We don't know if we're going to be in the middle category, probably. Top of the middle category, bottom of the middle category because of the first and the second games and where they're going to be played. Exciting times on Wednesday night. What are you expecting? Because obviously we're without Kyogo, we're without Maeda.
Yeah.
How are you expecting us to line up?
Yeah, we're obviously severely weakened in that attacking side. I think we'll see Ida start up front, and then probably Yang will come in the wide area because I'd imagine James Forrest is still out. So I think other than that, we'll probably line up similarly to last week, just with those two adjustments. Yeah, I think it's a big game. Obviously, when I said that earlier, in terms of jeopardy, there's not as much jeopardy on it. It's not like that, if we lose, we're done. Yes, it's huge in a number of other ways. One being as well, I think it will give us a good idea how well we're equipped for that playoff, because I'd say Villa aren't like your top tier sides that are going to win the competition, but they're probably in that next bracket where a lot of the teams left in the competition kind of fall under, which is, we'd be underdogs against. So it'd be good to see how we kind of cope. We obviously seen that performance against Atalanta where we were brilliant defensively, and I think we're going to have to be equally as solid, especially without Maeda and Kyogo. We're going to really have to be on it defensively and be disciplined. So I think it's a test for us to see, can we follow up what we did in Italy with another solid away game. We've kept clean sheets in our last two Champions League away games. So if we could do that again, we'll be delighted. In terms of where we finish, I think you're right. If we can finish between, is it 9th and 16th, then I think having that second leg at Celtic Park could be huge. Because if you just stay in a game, if you stay in a tie and then you bring it back to Celtic Park with our kind of recent home record now, you'd fancy us to have a decent chance. So that can be big in that sense. Obviously, there's a monetary aspect as well to gain. So a number of things riding on it. Villa obviously need the win to try and finish top 8. I think it's very unlikely that we can, even with a win. I think we need 7 other results at least to go our way, including the likes of Bayern Munich and Milan not winning and stuff like that. So yeah, for us, it's just a really good test. Always great to get up the kind of English Premiership clubs. If we do get a result, we've fared well in the past. And yeah, I think it'll be a brilliant atmosphere, and I just want to see us compete. I don't want to see like a game where we kind of capitulate or lose comfortably. I want to see a competitive game, and for us to show that we're ready for this playoff round.
I think so, because we're often told in the comment section, Quinny, stop talking about what the English pundits say about Celtic. Who cares what they say about Celtic? I think to be honest, I think there's a professional element of that, where they're constantly, the latest one last week was Rio Ferdinand, wasn't it? And you're thinking, well, what if your broadcaster then puts you in the commentary box for a game involving a Scottish side? I mean, how impartial are you going to be? If that's your mentality and that's the way that you look down your nose at the Scottish game. The big thing for me, Quinny, is if there's something wrong with Scottish football fans are the first to talk about it. But we're not walking about blind to all the issues that exist in Scottish football. We focus on Celtic and we think, well, we want to be able to improve at this level. You eventually shut up the doubters when you do it. There's other people. I mean, Gary Lineker speaking about Brendan Rodgers and how Leicester City are probably like looking at their decision at that time as well and having a touch of regret around it. Ange Postecoglou's probably regretting leaving us as well at this moment in time. It's not at the forefront of my mind. I'm just looking at the Villa game thinking, how do we, as Acsom says, how do we compete? How do we line up? How do we shape up? Can we do what we did against Atalanta in terms of the defensive display? Is that going to be risky?
I'm going to say right now, we're not losing. That's just how I feel right now. We are not losing this game for a few reasons, right? So people are saying don't think of it as a free hit. I think we will have a little bit of, like Acom's perfectly kind of summed up there. There's no jeopardy on it. So we're not going to go into this game with like the fear of the mistake will ruin everything. The whole campaign will fall around years and it'll be doomsday and everything else. Villa are in a totally different situation right now where they badly want top 8 because they don't want the extra games. They've been sniffing, they were top after like 2 games or something like that. They've had a bit of a slide back. I'm looking at the predicted 11 for the game at the moment, and there's not that much pace in it, but there is a lot of power in the likes of Morgan Rogers, John McGinn. I went down to Aston Villa, I think the season before last, and Villa Park, if you've never been, for anyone that's travelling, it's a great old, don't want to say the word British, but it's a great old British ground in that sense, where it's like old, it's got proper good atmosphere. The away section is well placed as well, so you'll see the Celtic fans on TV. I think it'll be good. But they have all the pressure. They have everything that they have to come out here for and really try and put turn the screw on us. Looking at their defence, it will be the likes of Matty Cash, Lamar Bogard might play in this one as well. And although they're a very good team, it's not a team that I think is going to be super beyond our reach of being able to do something against. Defensively is where the difference is going to be. If we can see 2 or 3 goals, we're probably not going to get anything out of it. But if we can keep that to 0, 1 or 2, then we're probably going to be in the mix for it. So I quite fancy our chances. And I think that with Kyogo not being in the squad, as it seems at the moment, Dyson being suspended, it might just give them, and I don't think about Unai Emery, but maybe the players or the fans or whatever, just that little bit more of that Celtic, we'll get the job done kind of attitude. And that really, we never go into games, and that's the kind of the dynamic going into it. And I think with the pace, the counter-attack, and the running power we've got from midfield and a few other areas, we'll definitely cause them problems. There's no 2 ways about it. And yeah, I don't see us losing it. That's just that's my top feeling. But the last thing I'll say on this is Unai Emery, is one of my favourite managers to kind of study or follow or whatever, because he's super good at what I kind of call chess ball, in the sense of he just puts, it's not really a formation, but he'll kind of move the team around, and I don't want to get too geeky on it or whatever, right? But he'll know exactly, they will be targeting Greg Taylor from the first minute. Let me put it like that. He will have us very well scouted. He'll have an area of the pitch he wants to exploit. He'll double up the likes of Morgan Rogers and McGinn and whatever somewhere, and they'll try and do something. But again, Brendan can play that game, and I think it'll be it'll be a good managerial kind of contest as well in that sense, mano a mano.
I'm really looking forward to it. Acsom will be at Bad Art and Design. We will be streaming the game as normal on here, but we'll also be at the Bad Art and Design. I'm bad at Arras, by the way. But Barra's Art and Design on the big screen, free pies, Liam McGrandle's on the tunes. It's free entry to come in. So if you want to book a table there, go onto the Bad website and you'll be able to do it. But when I look at it, Aston, obviously the big man's up top. I think he will play a similar role that he did against Atalanta, and that it's a thankless task he's got, Maeda up top. You mentioned earlier about who to play on the left. I would avoid playing Yang or Palmer. I would at all costs.
Thinking Luke McCowan.
I would think. Listen, you take the words out of my mouth. I'm thinking Luke McCowan. Kuhn, because I look at the Atalanta game and there was a lot of defensive play by Kuhn in that particular game. McCowan's got that in his Arsenal as well. So I would rather go that than Yang or Palmer.
It's a very interesting one. As we were just talking about it, I thought of that, and I think that's a good shout and one I would like to see actually, because I think he's got the kind of defensive discipline as well, and he's good on the ball, so can get us up the park. Especially like you say, the Villa will probably be kind of really going for it. I watched their game yesterday. They weren't brilliant, Villa, against West Ham. They drew 1 each and were probably fortunate to get the draw. But their kind of strongest areas, they're very quick and powerful, especially in transition. Their midfield's brilliant. Tielemans, who I really rate, but obviously a countryman of Engels, so Engels will be up for that and really wanting to kind of put on a performance. So I think it'll be interesting to see what Rodgers goes with on that left side, because he's a massive miss, Maeda, more so in Europe than anything else. He just his energy is infectious, and it just, especially against a team like Villa, who that's one of their kind of strengths, is just how kind of fast and powerful they are. So yeah, there's nothing to fear in terms of we should just go for it. As Quinny said earlier, without that kind of jeopardy, might help us, where we're not, playing with any kind of nerves. And hopefully we can come away with a result. It's interesting as well though, because you look at all the permutations. It's so hard to predict, but it could end up being one of those where a victory actually gives you a harder draw in the next round, based on how other results go. It's going to be a crazy night. Obviously, all the games on at once, so it'll be constantly fluctuating between who you can get. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people say that potentially 3 points puts you more in line to play some of the bigger boys. But either way, just great to be in that round, isn't it? And great to see Celtic still have another couple of games to look forward to in the Champions League.
Absolutely, it is great. It's great to have that game on the horizon. In one episode, we are talking about Aston Villa in the final game of the group stage of the Champions League. We know we're in the playoffs. We're talking about the return.
Is there breaking news? Is there breaking news?
Let's have a look.
Chat's given us it.
Here we go. Give us a breaking news, Quinny. You got it up on your screen?
No, but I can get it.
There we go. Jota official now, says McLaughlin P. Let's have a wee look. Is there a picture there in the kit? Come on.
Oh no, it's a video.
Is that a video, but from official Celtic?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Just a teaser.
A wee teaser. There you go, live on the podcast. Great timing.
That is. Is it on X? Is it?
I did share screen if you want it.
Oh, here we go. See, Quinny, that's why you're in here, man. You are a technician. Oh, brilliant. My word. Look at that. Oh,
love it.
Stroking the crest. Stroking the crest.
What does it say in the hashtag? Forever out.
Forever hours.
Forever.
Nice one.
That's a 9-year contract he's got then.
What a way to finish off, gentlemen, right? Well, there's loads to look forward to as Celtic fans at this moment in time. There was well over and still
I need the sound.
Over.
Somebody said, sorry, I took the screen away, but people are saying there's good tune with it.
It's Ellie Dixon singing.
Is it? Is it?
I don't know. I've seen that in the comments. Yeah.
Have they actually done Ellie Dixon?
I don't know.
Quite quiet, but it is. Yeah.
Oh my word!
And I think it's on the website as well. Someone's saying so. It's all kicking off.
It's all kicking off, and we were here to see it. Thank you, 3,170 of you for tuning in. Really, really appreciate that. And obviously, it's great. It's a great week to be a Celtic fan. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to come and see us live, there's something like 21 tickets, I'm being informed, for John Hartson on Thursday. Come and hear what John's got to say about everything that's happened this week. That will be after the Villa game as well. Give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to us on YouTube, and thanks for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.